Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be using this Paper Smooches die. You can see I die cut quite a few of these roses out of white cardstock. I thought this die was gorgeous and I'm actually going to be making two different cards with it. So I'm placing these on a piece of white cardstock. Now if I was to do this over, I would place them on white watercolor cardstock because I'm actually going to be watercoloring one of the cards. It worked, but it would look a lot better if I used watercolor paper. So I went ahead and glued those down with my multi-medium in the matte finish. I thought I didn't need to show that to you guys because that's pretty boring watching me glue a whole bunch of roses down. So I just put a little adhesive on the back and glued them into place, and I actually put it under some like heavy books so that it would lay flat. I put a little bit of the spun sugar distress ink onto my cards or on my nonstick craft sheet, and I'm using my water brush to go over the roses. So it's going to create this really pretty watercolor background over the roses and on the background. Like I said, I would do this over using some watercolor cardstock because it didn't blend and kind of like flow out the best. You'll be able to see it in the end photos kind of in how it looks. It looks fine, but it's just there's that different look with watercolor cardstock, if you know what I mean. So I'm going over each of those, and you can see it's a really light pink color, so it's not going to show too much, but I'm going to be adding in some darker colors in just a minute. Finish up that last one, and then I'm going to go ahead and put some of the forest moss on my craft sheet and color over all of the leaves. When I glued these onto the card base, I also cut some of the edges off so they're hanging off the edges. I added just like a leaf here or there. So you can really use your die cuts and stretch them a little bit further on your card instead of just adding whole ones onto the card. So then I'm going to be taking the picked raspberry and adding little bits of darker color into those pink flowers like I said. And this just is going to create some of those shadows, and it's really going to make the flowers stand out a little bit more. And the thing about not using watercolor cardstock, it's again because the water doesn't soak into this cardstock. This is the Coordinations 110-pound cardstock. It's not meant for watercolor, but it works. You're just going to get a different look. Alright, so I'm going to set that one aside to dry, and you can see I have another white one. I'm going to keep that one white, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiments. I'm using the Scripty Sentiment stamp set. First I'm going to go over my black strips of cardstock with my powder bag, just so that no static electricity sticks on there, because I'm going to be heat embossing these. So I have my Versamark ink, and I'm going to ink up my stamp and just stamp it right onto the cardstock, and this one says sending hugs, and the second one that I'm going to be stamping says best wishes. That's one of the reasons I love this sentiment set. There's so many great sentiments, so I'm going to be using the best wishes one for a wedding card. And then the sending hugs one you can use anytime if someone's going through a rough time, if you just want to say hi to someone. It's a really fun stamp set. Alright, so then I'm going to be heat embossing these with the Hero Arts white embossing powder. So I'll put those on a piece of computer typing paper so that I can funnel back in the embossing powder to the jar. So I'll tap off the extra, and then I can take my heat tool to heat those and melt all of that embossing powder so that it is set for my card. I'm going to take my favorite pair of Cutter Bee scissors, and I'm just cutting a diagonal line on the end of each of those sentiment strips. I did cut both of them different ways, but you can do it however you would like. So I have two white card bases. I'm going to go ahead and put some adhesive on the back of that first one, and then adhere that down onto my card base. You can see it's a little bit warped just because of the water that I added to that. I actually had it underneath some heavy books for a few days before I came back to this card, and it was still a little bit warped, but it was better than it was in the beginning. And I'll add some adhesive onto my second card. and then press that down, and then I have my sentiments that I'm going to be adding with some 3D foam squares. They're the larger ones that are from Best Creation. So I can remove all the little backings from those and then adhere them right down onto my card bases. So I'm going to choose the Sending Hugs one for the watercolor piece with a little bit of color, and then the all white one I'm going to put the Best Wishes sentiment on there. So you can see I made a mistake, and I'm leaving this in here to show that I do make mistakes. I am a human. I put the sentiment on upside down, so the card opened the wrong way. So I went ahead and carefully peeled that up. It did pick up a little bit of one of the roses, but I'm going to place that right where it was before, so it's a little bit lower, and then it covers that spot right up. So I'm going to be adding a few sequins. I have a mix of grays, clears, and whites, and then I'm also going to be adding a few of the little pink ones from this other mix onto the colored one. And all of the supplies I'm using on these cards will be linked below if you're interested in checking any of them out. So I'm just randomly scattering these. Since the card itself is so simple with just the die cuts, it helps to add a little bit of sparkle with those sequins. It just adds something else, and it really draws your eye towards that sentiment. You want to kind of lead them up to the focal point on your card. So once I get those arranged, I'm going to go ahead and adhere them down with my multi-medium in the matte finish. I just squirt a little bit of adhesive and then press each sequin into place, and this adhesive holds sequins extremely well. It's a really strong adhesive. If you don't have any, you could also use glossy accents, or you could use any liquid glue, because with sequins you really want to use a liquid glue instead of, you could always use a glue dot, but then you have to cut it down and it just gets a little bit more complicated, so this way it's a little easier. And this adhesive is extremely affordable and it lasts a long time. And that is going to finish both of these cards. So hopefully it gives you an idea of how to kind of change up the same look on a card by adding a little bit of watercolor to one and then keeping the other one fairly simple. Make sure that you are subscribed to my channel so you don't miss any of my new videos, and I will see you all back here next time. Bye everyone!